Nvidia is up in the pre-market, of course. Today, Piper reiterates that the stock is overweight. The chip giant wants to stop the downward trend that has caused shares to go into correction zone, as you are aware. Jim, you mentioned that neither the top nor the low end of broad demand has changed. And the fact that Microsoft received their chips right away made the wags, whatever they are, say, oh, then there must be a demand problem if they got all their chips. I'm positive of it. That isn't accurate at all. Carl, you are aware that I dislike an up opening. Those who purchased it yesterday at 127 will be shooting that 133 with heat-seeking missiles. We did not yet have the crescendo sell-off that you require. You mentioned that at noon yesterday, you believed we would be approaching minus 127, 128, but it immediately reverted to 128 after reaching 130. Nvidia has some sellers, David, who have just concluded that you know what, it cannot possibly be as good as last year, and it will be just as good, in my opinion. Jen Sun Huang will say something at the CES keynote on January 6 that will make you wish you hadn't sold it at 127. Everything will be as good, you claim. Are you referring to the company's success, or do you genuinely think that the stock will perform similarly to how it did this year? We're still talking about a stock that, as you can see, follows the performance, even though it has been flat for the past 6 months. The main issue is that people have forgotten what the transition from the 386 to the 486 to the Pentium was like. There are times when you are temporarily unable to ship. It found out that shipping this Blackwell was far more difficult than shipping their current chip, which was Hopper. Although they are not the most recent version, the chips that Microsoft purchased are incredibly potent. And don't forget Meta, which claims that Nvidia AI would be the most potent. Meta is simply enhanced, updated, upgraded, or a price goal rise. It isn't Nvidia AI at the moment. I believe it ends around June 28, 2023. All right though, the glasses, the translating glasses? How about that, huh? I'm giving the other pair of glasses to everyone. That is my gift to everyone. It doesn't matter because nobody watches my family, even them. However, I do have the ones that, well, tell me if you have an extra pair. The ones that Wall Street Journal writer Joanna Stern is quite complimentary about. The real Ray-Bans are really awesome. You can converse with them, snap photos, and generally have a blast. Despite your criticism of Asterisk, the information Asterisk, they have an article stating that Nvidia's cloud offering may eventually compete with AWS. Having said nothing positive about Nvidia during one of the best runs in history, I believe they simply felt the heat. Apart from, it's bad, this or that. They seem to have a curse on Nvidia, really. What about Nvidia? A jinx. Never mind, nope, not David, not you. It would be similar to me purchasing Super Bowl tickets. Oh, yes, they simply say these things that are just, my goodness, it's amazing. You would think the corporation is leading the way in peak capital expenditures, bespoke silicon scaling barriers, and EV charging station asset competitiveness if you followed them. Keep in mind that Marvell and Broadcom technologies utilize the GPU. The GPU cannot be replaced by them. Although they must purchase a huge quantity of Nvidia GPUs, Amazon would be thrilled if Trump could possibly keep up with the GPU. The Nvidia GPU. They continue to do so. We discussed this yesterday, and nobody is questioning it. We will say it now. But once more, just. However, do you think Nvidia's financial results will be comparable to what we've seen thus far during the changeover in the upcoming year? We must go, but let's continue on to Nvidia, says the music that's currently playing in my ear. According to Asterisk, the information Asterisk story, Nvidia could establish a cloud computing company that could compete with Amazon Web Services and others. Jim, its creators estimate that it might eventually bring in $150 billion from cloud services and software. Cloud and AI software will be a huge market in the future, according to CEO Jensen Huang. The company's software sales alone are expected to bring in $2 billion a year. Amazon, the industry leader in cloud computing for many years, would face significant challenges if they decide to enter the cloud market. In my opinion, Amazon Web Services accounts for over 20% of the company's total revenue. with a sizable amount of it coming from the cloud. They and Nvidia have engaged in a form of co-opetition. I'm eager to see their claws if they do begin eating their food. However, Amazon intends to develop its own AI chips and may eventually stop purchasing as many Nvidia chips. Seeing that push and pull is therefore fascinating. The other aspect of this narrative that really interests me, MBY, is that it's a classic investor tale of a business expanding as it provides a product, isn't it? Everyone wants the highly successful AI chips that Nvidia has created. How does Nvidia track the client along that path? You consider Apple and the iPhone, don't you? Apple provided us with all of these fantastic things. What did they ultimately develop into one of the most significant aspects of their company today? The services company, isn't it? After you utilize the product, they kind of walk through the customer journey with you and keep selling you items. That is somewhat different from Nvidia's AI chips, which are much more complex and B2B. Okay, everyone bought our chips. How do we become a part of the next version of AI? Is a valid analogy, in my opinion. We discussed the sort of transition from infrastructure to what do we do with this earlier in the hour. One of the most important components of that next step is cloud services. Okay, maybe AI chip demand isn't the entire part of the investor story. You begin to say if Nvidia can indeed make $150 billion in revenue from this in the long run. Because I believe that the question has been, what about when everyone has enough chips? For the majority of the past 18 months. Correct? That concludes the conversation. If we hear more about this on next earnings calls, perhaps the conversation will start to change a little. Moreover, $150 billion. I estimate that AWS makes around $100 billion from its cloud business, would mean that they are also stating, we think we're going to beat the biggest guy in the room here too, which is intriguing going forward. Simply put, I think it will be interesting to see. As you say, Nvidia has already somewhat transformed itself several times. They began as a manufacturer of video game chips before becoming this massive AI company. Will they grow to be a major cloud player as well? We'll see if they succeed because they have a lot of competition. They face fierce competition in a wide range of areas, don't they? Perhaps your answer is to zig a little bit and have other revenue streams that can also pick up if you have the chip competition that we'd have been discussing for the past several weeks. It's definitely not a story for tomorrow, but it's something to keep an eye on, particularly if you want to stay onto Nvidia for the long haul. It could be appealing to get past that semiconductor tail and explore alternative revenue streams. We'll wrap off with Nvidia, whose stock is up almost 3% ahead of the market, having recently recovered from those losses. Off around 10% from its greatest closing price this year, the stock is still teetering on the verge of that so-called correction region. Investors are currently awaiting proof of its ability to swiftly develop its Blackwell AI next-generation processors. Those shares are among the S&P's better performers, up almost 170% so far this year. Speaking of Nvidia, the Magnificent Seven's underperforming stock. It's still up more than 160% this year after all. It has had a successful run. I believe that people are overreacting to this. However, can you guys notice any waning data that somewhat mirrors what we've witnessed since reaching those record highs last month? Since it appears that this version fixes the grammar and punctuation while maintaining the same content.